Hi, hope everybody's doing well. My name is Alec Campbell, and I am a radio producer slash radio host at 99.9 The Fan in Raleigh. And currently, I am the producer of The Adam Gold Show, and I also host the Carolina Hurricanes pregame, intermissions, and postgame show. I got into this field because I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. Most of my childhood, I wanted to be actually a television broadcaster. I wanted to be on SportsCenter. That was always my goal. Um, but but I always had an affinity for the radio. I remember as a kid, we always used to listen to John Boy and Billy on the way to school. Used to listen to Car Talk as a kid a lot too. So in retrospect, while radio wasn't necessarily my first goal, I remember, just loving the way they were able to create sort of a theater of the mind through just an audible medium as opposed to through visual. So, what I did was I ended up going to Elon University and I got a degree in communications, broadcasting communications. And I did some work on the campus radio station, although I did not start doing that until I was a senior in college. And post college, I kind of wasn't really ready to get into my career. So I moved to Chicago and I lived there and I worked in restaurants and stuff like that until I finally decided, okay, now it's time for me to finally start pursuing my career. And so I ended up going to the Illinois Center for Broadcasting. I think it's now known as the Illinois Media School. And that was a 10-month program that essentially got me an internship. That was really the only reason I wanted to go, was because I needed to get an internship, and in order for me to get an internship, I needed to be receiving school credit in order to get it. So I went to the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, I got an internship, and from there I was kind of off and running. I moved from Chicago back to North Carolina. I got a job at what was ISP Sports and is now IMG College, and or actually it's now IMG Learfield. And I also at the same time got a job at WFNZ, which is a sports talk station in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I worked there for 2 years, both of those places, until I got my first full-time job producing an evening show down in Atlanta, Georgia on 92.9 The Game. I was there for 2 years, and then I left there and I went up to Sirius XM for a year in Washington, D.C., and then from there, I came down to Raleigh, and I've been here for the last 5 years or so. Um, so it's been kind of a whirlwind chasing down the career, but for a lot of media people, that's kind of what you have to do just because, like, for instance, in my field, if you want to do sports talk radio, there's only one sports talk radio station here, which means there are only a few jobs that are in programming on the air or producing or stuff like that. In fact, at my station now, there are 3 full-time producers and there are 4 full-time hosts. So if you want to get, if you want to move up and stuff like that, you basically have to change markets. It's not like being in sales or education or accounting or anything like that, where you can find hundreds of those jobs in different companies around the same area. You basically have to move from market to market. So that's what I've done. And I've now been in the game for about 10 years, actually 11 years. And it's been really fun. Basically, I get to follow and cover sports all the time. And then I get to go in and talk about them. Although I am primarily the producer of the Adam Gold Show. Well, for me, what it means is basically I make the show come to life. I am what differentiates just 2 people talking and having a conversation, and I make it into a show. Anyone can sit around and just talk about sports if they want to, but what kind of direction does it have? What kind of effects does it have around it? Music, sounds, things like that. So what I do every day is I basically sit behind a big soundboard. I make sure the mics are on and off. I make sure all the commercials are getting played, um, all of that stuff. But I also help conceptualize the ideas and the topics for the show and figure out how we're going to execute those things. So the way I kind of look at my job is that the actual show, if you want to put it in sports terms, the actual show is the game. Everything outside of the show is preparation. So as soon as the show ends every day, I go home and I kind of take a little bit of time off to unwind. And then I just start kind of monitoring the news from then on throughout the rest of the night, really. I watch whatever games I need to watch on television, whether that's an ACC basketball game, whether that's an NFL football game on the weekends or on a weeknight, whether that's Carolina Hurricanes hockey games, which I watch every one of them because I host the pre and the post game show. So I am just basically constantly kind of taking in information. I'm scrolling through Twitter. I am looking on different news sources for news, for things that pop up. And I kind of just make mental notes or I email myself things throughout the night for the next day. And then once the next day comes around, I basically recheck the news in the morning, see if anything else has come up, and on my way into work, generally speaking, I call Adam up and we have sort of a general conversation about what we want to talk about that day. He usually pitches me the things that he's interested in, and I tell him what I'm interested in and see if he has any interest in those things that I'm interested in. And we figure out how we can kind of trump those topics up. How can we make them entertaining? How can we make them interesting? What kind of sound bites can we use around them? To what kind of music can we play, all that kind of stuff to again make the show come to life. And then we go in and capture all the sound bites that we need, organize them, and at noon every single day we sit down and then it's sort of game time from there and we do the show. Most things are fairly planned out. We don't always plan out every single segment, but sometimes you just have to fly by the seat of your pants and be adaptable and ready to take on whatever comes at you during the show because the news doesn't stop too. So we want to be able to keep an eye on what's going on while we're on the air as well. So that's kind of a broad overview of what my day is like. On Carolina Hurricanes hockey game days, I do all of that. And then when I come home, I prep for the Hurricanes pregame show, which starts 30 minutes before game time. And then I do the pregame show. I get on the air during intermissions, and then I do the postgame show. So it can be a fairly long day um, between doing the Adam Gold show and then doing Carolina Hurricanes hockey. You don't really technically need formal education to do my job. I think what you need is experience. Now, like I said earlier, in order to get experience, you kind of have to get an internship or something along those lines. And generally speaking, you have to be in school to get an internship. But most of the time, for the most part, what you need is experience and repetition. And these days, it's a lot easier than it used to be in the sense that you can start your own podcast. You can start your own, you know, video segment or whatever from home. And so if you can create a demo tape or a reel, um, you've got the resources to do that at this point in our, you know, with our technological advances. Um, but I think the most important things are you got to be able to write and you have to be able to communicate well, speak clearly. So those are probably the most important skills. And then you got to have a little bit of personality as well, because again, it's a show, so you're trying to make this, as fun and entertaining for people as possible. I'll say this: people ask me a lot about the pay and the wages and all that kind of stuff. And the truth is that anytime you get into television or radio or journalism of any kind, newspapers, for the most part, until you get to a place where you are a major sort of national writer, or you've created a brand for yourself, or you're a national radio personality, you're not going to make tons of money. In fact, the truth is you really don't get into the business to make money. I've always looked at it more as a calling than anything else. It was just something that I felt like I wanted to do and felt compelled to do and felt that I could do. It was something that I was interested in. And it's really a labor of love more than anything else. There are ways to make money, and you can obviously make a decent enough living to, have a family and buy a house and do all of those things as well. But it's not really one in general, especially on a local level, that you're going to make millions and millions of dollars doing. You can do it if you make it to the big national places like ESPN or CBS. Those guys can make big time money doing it, but there are a lot of external factors that go into getting those jobs that are sort of outside of your control at times as well. And it can be a difficult business to stay in at the very beginning because of that, just because it's hard to make a lot of money. So I had a lot of side jobs as I was coming up through the ranks. And if you can sort of get through that part of it and hang around long enough and you take the opportunities that are given to you, then you can make it in the business and you can figure out a way to make a decent enough living. But in general, it's not something that you go into and you say, oh, yeah, I'm going to make a ton of money doing this, because there's just not a lot of money in it. My advice for anyone who wants to get into radio broadcasting would be, it certainly doesn't help to go to a college that is good with broadcasting. Syracuse is probably the most well known broadcasting university there is. I went to Elon University here in North Carolina in Burlington, and they have tremendous broadcasting there. So I would highly recommend going there. They've got a radio station, they've got news, they've got television news, they've got some state of the art equipment there, they've won tons of awards. You can get real hands on experience broadcasting there, which is, again, the thing that you need the most is repetition, and you will get those opportunities if you find those places to do it. So that's what I would say to do. I would also say, if you wanted to go the route of the trade school type situation, like a media school, like what I did, that works too. But for the most part, you get into it what you put out of it. If you're not willing to do the work, then you're probably not going to be successful. So you have to go into it with the idea that you have to do everything that you can to try to get yourself on people's radars and get yourself a resume built. I guess the last thing that I would say in terms of job progression is that there isn't necessarily a ladder that you climb in media. It's not as cut and dry maybe as it would be in lots of other industries where you stay around for a certain period of time and you get promoted and all that kind of stuff. You basically have to hunt down the jobs, and you sort of, I don't know, elevate yourself. I mean, in certain situations you can go from producing to hosting, which hosting makes more money than producing does, and a lot of people go that route. They start by producing and they end up in a host chair. Some people have goals of being on the air, and then they find out along the way that they like producing better and they like being behind the scenes better. So you can certainly um, you know figure that out as you go along. I would say to people who are bent on, or really want to be on the air, to chase that down as much as possible. If you can do it, I would just take on air jobs for the most part, because what's happened to me is I had to take producing jobs because those were the ones that opened up for me, and those were the ones that paid me the most money and allowed me to pay my bills. But it has kind of pigeonholed me into just producing, and what I really want to do is be on the air. I've gotten plenty of opportunities to be on the air and be in the host seat. So I think I'm kind of working my way there a little bit, but maybe it's a little bit more of a direct or faster route if you just go somewhere small at first, cut your teeth, and keep taking those uh, on-air jobs. But I guess the point is there's no real promotion structure in radio and television. You just kind of take opportunities where you can get them, and hopefully, in the end, you've built up enough experience that you can show to people, hey, this is what I deserve to be doing, and this is what I deserve to be making. And you move up markets, you move up pay. So if you work in smaller markets, you're going to make less money. If you move to the bigger markets, the bigger media markets, you'll probably make more money. Other than that, I mean, radio is a really fun thing to be in, especially if you're really interested in sports talk radio. It is low stress in the sense that, you know, you get to sit in an air conditioned room and tell people what you think about the teams that you've just watched. You can wear a t shirt to work and jeans every single day. You don't have to wear a suit and tie or anything like that. Um, but it's subjective too. So you're sort of relying on other people to like your work. It's you can't really do more work. You can do more to prep, and you can work harder to be as knowledgeable as you possibly can. And generally speaking, if you do that, you'll probably be successful. But in the end, it's really in the eye of the beholder whether or not you're good or not. And there's a lot of subjectivity to it, whether that's from your bosses or from the audience that you're trying to appeal to. And if they don't like your work, then uh, it can be sometimes, I guess, hard to stay employed that way. You're kind of relying on people to like you, as opposed to just having a certain, quantifiable quality of work that gets you by. But otherwise, super fun. It can be a challenging industry to stay afloat in because there's not a lot of money in it. You got to travel around to, take new jobs. So I would expect to move a lot. But if you've got a passion for journalism or broadcasting or anything like that, then you'll have a really fun time doing it. Anyways, I hope some of that sounded clear and made sense. I hope it was helpful in some way, shape, or form. And good luck to anybody out there that's trying to get into sports writing. If you already listened to the show, thank you so much. We appreciate you.